Broad Street Review Podcast, Philly's online hub for arts, culture, and commentary, where art and ideas meet. I am your host, Darnell Radford. On today's podcast, we get to know Associate Editor Kyle V. Hiller, who stopped by to talk about his start in journalism, what makes him unique, and his own podcast, Casual Misfits Radio. Here's my interview with Associate Editor Kyle V. Hiller. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today we're here with Kyle V. Hiller.
Hey.
How you doing, Kyle?
I'm excellent.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, I feel welcome.
Kyle's our new associate editor, and he assumed the role after Elena Johns moved up to editor-in-chief. So welcome to Broad Street Review. Thanks. And welcome to the podcast.
I feel like I'm still pinching myself at the fact that I am the associate editor at Broad Street Review because, I mean, to be honest, when I first applied for the job, I did not think I had a chance at all. And I was going to not do it, but, you know, it was Thanksgiving morning. I was like, I got to turn this in. And I did it. And here we are. Fast forward 6 months, 7, 8, 9 months later, give or take.
Yeah.
A couple seasons ago.
So apparently one of the selling points is your ability to reach a deadline.
I guess so.
He put it in time. All right, let's give him a shot.
I'm good with deadlines.
Cool.
I think it's hard. I feel like, you know, being a black man, and you think colored people time is a thing that, you know, it's just afflicted of all of us, and which, you know, it may or may not be. But when it comes to a deadline for some articles getting posted, I think I overcorrect for black people time. Yeah. And I make it harder for everyone around me to be late. Right. That's why you got to tell everyone, hey, if I want everyone to be there at 7, I tell them 6:15.
Exactly.
And then everyone gets there at 7:15.
Exactly.
That's a great time.
I had to tell my partner, I was like, I'm not trying to fix you. I know that you're running late.
Right. I'm just giving you grace. That's
I'm just going to give you a different time. That works out.
Because what is time?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
About me. So I'm a writer from West Philly, born and raised. I have been writing since I was a kid. I still have all the books that I wrote when I was in preschool and kindergarten. All the little booklets, they sit in a little bin in my closet. If there were ever a fire, that'd be what I would go for.
Same.
And I remember very much the day when I wrote this one story, and I still remember what the book looks like and everything. And my kindergarten teacher, Miss Solomon, said, you got to go read this to the first graders. And I was in kindergarten. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You want me to go downstairs to the first graders? They're going to just judge me and tear the story apart. They're going to be the worst critics ever. And I remember sitting on like a little stool there in Mrs. Hughes' class. And I still remember like the people sitting in the front row because I'm still friends with some of those people. And just reading the story and then just getting applause from that. Mm. And that really affirmed me and made me feel like, I may not feel like my writing is good, but other people seem to think it's good. And I had a lot of support growing up as a kid, just wanting to write. My grandma was really supportive of it. My mom and my sister were very supportive of it. So, and everybody that, again, like in school, they knew me as the writer. Mm-hmm. Really write as soon as possible. Just, you know, so that's kind of my origin story as a writer for the most part.
Cool.
Yeah.
I hated writing book reports. It was like just knowing that the end point was so far away. Like it was 10 pages, right. Double spaced. You're like, 10 pages?
It's so many pages.
How do you know I need 10 pages?
Right, exactly.
I might be able to sort this out in like a
paragraph.
Long-winded paragraph.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That paragraph would go 10 pages too. Just enlarge the font, the spacing, the margins, all that. We found ways to trick it out. But
And then I started thinking that everything is a version of a press release, kind of.
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is.
That middle part of a press release
Yep.
is it's 8 pages long.
Yep, basically. That's what the current events that we would always have to turn in back in the day were. They were just, all right, watch the news and write something about it. That was literally what a press release was, just in reverse.
Yeah. You've always been a writer, but when and why did you decide to become a journalist?
So my interest in journalism came actually from my interest in sports, which was weird because my dad used to watch just the Eagles games every Sunday faithfully, right? And it was a big deal. And I remember being a kid and not understanding, well, what is sports? Sports are dumb. So I would, play tricks on them and block the channels that the football games would be on or whatever. And then one day I just kind of sat down and watched a game. It was like a Monday Night Football game. And it was like the Green Bay Packers and the Philly Eagles. And it was just like, this is fun. It was a good game.
Yeah.
And I kind of fell in love with sports after that. And then going beyond that, started watching like ESPN and things like that. And Stuart Scott was one of the anchors back in the day. And, he was a black man. He was just like really funny and had all the lines and punchlines and things like that were really interesting. And I was like, I want to be that. And ever since then, after that, basically, I started buying the Daily News and reading it front to back, the whole thing, just diving into it. And just reading all that really made me realize that there was so much storytelling happening in journalism that really took me out of my own mind and put me into somebody else's perspective.
Yeah.
Which I feel like finds its way into my fiction writing, but as far as journalism is concerned, I just found an interest initially from just like pursuing sports journalism was kind of my start, and then it being something where it was like I wanted to be the Philly sports journalist or something like that to get started, but that never really happened, which it's whatever, but. Yeah, it's been in my blood since I was probably around 10, 11, 12 years old when it all got started.
So before you joined Broad Street Review in an official capacity, did you contribute to Broad Street Review?
I did not. I had read through Broad Street Review here and there, but I hadn't thought to contribute. I'm not exactly sure why. I think when I discovered Broad Street Review, it was around the same time that I was writing for Philadelphia Metro, and I was doing kind of the same stuff, but I wasn't actively pitching outside of that at that point I'm not exactly sure why, but it just kind of happened that way. But when I saw, associate editor for that, it kind of clicked, and it said, maybe I am ready for this after all. So, yeah.
You'd be surprised, the power's in the ask.
Yeah,
Just put yourself out there and okay.
Right. And again, it goes back to perspective, because I think, when you're doing something and you feel like, yeah, you do an okay job at it, but when everybody else around you is just clamoring about how good you are at something, you don't believe it.
Yeah.
Until things start happening around you. I saw a comment, someone left a comment on my Facebook this morning saying, hey, I really enjoy your newsletter blurbs. And every time I write a newsletter blurb, I'm like, this is terrible and so hokey and preachy, and I need to just stop it. But every time I think that, someone hits me up and says, that really resonated with me. And I'm like, hey, you just don't know. You got to really start thinking outside yourself, I think.
So the terrible is internalizing.
It is.
And then the hokey is probably what the draw is. The
right.
Hook. Because people are like, this guy's a nerd, and I'm going to follow this guy.
Right. And that's something that I've been trying to lean into a little bit more in my life, is the fact that that's who I am. I'm the nerdy kid who just drops these random pockets of wisdom that really aren't necessarily that wise, but, they're just the way that I think. And I like to think that, I think a little bit differently than, people may or may not think. And I just try to bring that out from other people, because it's not like my ideas are original. It's just like, I'm just pulling from what I hear from other people and just applying it in such a way that it's my language, it's my words, it's my verbiage that comes from being a nerd, so.
What is it, like no ideas are original? Right. Every idea is kind of taken from another idea. It's just made your own with other things. It's always in hindsight too.
Right.
It's like we have the fortunate benefit of experiencing all these writers that came before us
So now we can take their styles and kind of incorporate them into art. That's what I was trying to say.
Right.
Sort of. And you can't repeat it anyway. Right. So if someone says, oh, he's got a tone that's very much like so-and-so, it's not exact because unless you're plagiarizing, that's something totally different.
It's like in music when you're sampling something. On my way here, I was listening to A Tribe Called Quest, and I think about how Jay Dilla will take samples that are just totally off the wall and flip it into this thing that sounds so different, but it still echoes what that original essence was and brings something new to it. That's how I approach writing in general, is that I'm taking these ideas from all these different places, all these different experiences, other books, other media, or just life experiences, that when they all come together, what do they sound like? What do they feel like, taste like? All the senses that we can put into words. That's how I approach writing. That and synesthesia really helps. So, when you start seeing colors too, it's like, okay, I see how, this frying pan is red to me. But I don't see the frying pan, but the sound of it itself will make me think the color red or gray or anything like that. So it's like, so it's probably like the fire in it, but it's also the actual material that it's made from and how that kind of coalesces together. Like, that's what happens in my head when I go to pull the dishes out before I start cooking.
So you get lost in thoughts, and those become words.
Right, exactly. Which is also interesting because when I do try to write, I try to make sure that I'm writing I try to do less is more with my writing too. So trying to navigate what it is that I'm experiencing and how am I experiencing it. I feel like I end up writing so much, but then I try to whittle it down to just something that's small and more compact and easy for other people to digest. Just as a testament to the fact that words are so overrated, which is kind of a weird thing to hear from a writer. But I think they are, because I think so much of it is just linking these particular words or sentences or feelings or whatever you want to call them into what the reader may or may not be experiencing. Just bringing that to the table in such a way that it allows them to interpret it, so that whatever my sample, quote unquote, is, they can take that and then they can make it their own. And that's our responsibility as writers, I feel like.
I think what's funny about writing is less is more. However, what makes people fear writing is the thought that they will not write enough. Not necessarily that what they write isn't going to be meaningful. It's just like, but I think that is the structure of education. Requiring us to be able to, elaborate and
do those 10 pages.
But it's like, I don't know if I can, because you're in your head about the 10 pages instead of the thought that you're trying to convey. And because if you have the thought clearly in your mind, then you probably would get there, and maybe you'll have, I had a little extra, so it's actually 12 pages.
It's funny how mathematics penetrates just words like that and literature and things like that. Because as someone who I feel like I'm kind of two-sided with stuff like that, like I'm very much an art person, but I also really appreciate math. I see that. So when people ask me, well, what's the word count? Well, aim for 300 for a preview, but if you have to go under because there's not much material, then do it. But if you feel like you really want to go into this, by all means, have fun with it. Experiment, explore, and figure out what you want to bring to the table for the people, because a really good preview can be 200 words, and it can also be 700 words. The numbers are arbitrary. I think it's more about the concept and the context, and did you get your point across, and understanding that. And that's something that I feel like isn't really taught so well in our education system, or at least the way when I was brought up. That's not how I saw it. It's like, okay, turn in this 4-page essay for English class in high school, and every essay was 4 pages. But I'm like, everything has to be 4 pages? Where did that number come from? Exactly. And we don't think about that.
We sat in a room that had no children in it and talked about what would be the ideal, if they hand us 4 pages, it means they've done the work. For the most part. It's probably something completely arbitrary. It's like, but did they get their point across? I don't know, but there's 4 pages here of gibberish.
And that's a big thing in the fiction industry too. Different genres have different word counts that are expected. So, a young adult science fiction book is going to have about 75,000 words, but if there's anything less than that, your editor is going to say, well, you probably need to add more, or the publisher is going to be a little bit hesitant to publish something if it's smaller, or if it's longer, if it's maybe along the 85,000 words. But it's like, so many times I've read some young adult fiction, and I just feel like the middle part just kind of gets lost, and it feels like so much of it is being forced just for the sake of it there being space. And I think there are ways to create the kind of space that makes it compelling or interesting, but I think people get so obsessed with numbers in a world that's so much more concerned about the word. And I don't know, these are the things that I think about. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, what I'm experiencing just in this conversation is that you have a thought process behind it, and I wonder if it is a challenge for you to sort of simplify your message.
I think so.
Or do you just hand it to Elena and then Elena takes it?
Basically, I think I'm getting better at that. But I think for a long time, my ideas were so big and they were so diverse and they pulled from so many different places that it is hard for me to find focus in my writing sometimes. And again, it goes back to the whole less is more thing. And you really have to look at a piece and think, okay, what's the most important thing here? What is the value proposition of this particular essay, feature, preview, review, whatever? There's something at the core of it. And you kind of have to get used to killing your darlings with your writing. So it's like, you have to get rid of this thing that you think you want to have it, you want to keep it in there, but it doesn't really make sense. And sometimes the more you write, the more you edit, the more you get a sense of when a sentence doesn't work, where you're just... I call them these lust paragraphs, where it's like you want to put it in there because it sounds sexy, but in reality it's not conducive to what the whole picture is. There's nothing wrong with lusting for paragraphs, but at the same time, if you want to have a really solid thing, you got to get rid of that stuff and put it aside. And those feelings, those thoughts, those ideas, those words can be really fleeting because they may have value, but more in a way that it's helping you get a feel for what the piece is, but the words themselves aren't necessary. So whatever passion you may feel about those particular words, those paragraphs, or those ideas, take it and implement that more into what it is that you're saying, whether it be the flow of it all, the rhythm of a general piece, or just maybe some of the words that you're using there, just disperse them everywhere else. There's so many different ways to just compose something where it is simplifying it, but it's not easy. So it's not a very simple description of how to simplify, but, which is kind of ironic. So.
But it can be applied to so many different things. If you think about it, if you're in the kitchen and you're cooking, you're not going to use you're going to use all of these ingredients, but not every single bit of these ingredients. Like if you chop down some vegetables, you're not going to use all of them. You're going to use like some core parts of it to ultimately make this meal. You're going to technically leave a lot on the table, or you're going to have byproducts. In I guess the marketing term would be byproducts for the main thing you want to have, but here's the other thing that comes out of it. And I guess we just have to remind ourselves that all that extra that we add here is what allowed us to get to the simplified message, the one that makes the most impact. And if we think about that for everything, then, I get it. This makes sense now. So I should just kind of word vomit and then see what happens. We'll find the message in there or somewhere in. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, and then you will start to figure it out.
And it goes back to the whole cooking thing. I think that's an interesting analogy because a lot of times when you do cook or you prep meals or things like that, what ends up happening is that you may have too much. So when you have all that extra stuff, what do you do with it? It could be other meals. It could be other snacks that you could be making. And when you do a lot of cooking, what ends up happening is that you know what to do with those extra sweet potatoes. You know that when you saute mushrooms and spinach, you're going to have a broth that comes after it. What do you do with that broth? How do you store it? And all that other stuff. That's the same thing with writing. It's like when you got all these extra words that you aren't going to use, where are you going to use them somewhere else?
To be fair, there will never be extra sweet potatoes.
Pretty much. And being able to mentally prepare for something like that. When you go into a project knowing that there's going to be extras, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Right. So you are also a novelist.
Yeah, I am.
And tell me a little bit about that, because just writing a piece for submission is daunting in itself.
Yeah.
But then writing an entire novel where essentially you're creating a world that people can live in for a moment, and it has to make sense from beginning to end. Talk a little bit about that and some of the pieces that you've brought to the landscape.
So being a novelist is also another one of those things that I have to pinch myself sometimes and remind myself, hey, you are a published author. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of am. Because I went to BookCon a few weeks ago in New York, and same thing, where everyone else is just, a fan or reader or whatever, but the people that are also on the panels, I'm like, hey, I'm like them too. That's cool. But I really don't think that much of it. But my first book, The Recital, came out 3 years ago now, which is crazy. It's a story about this girl who ends up in this fight after school and nearly kills a girl because she discovers, oh crap, my hands have magic in them. And it's about her going through the motions of just trying to cover up that secret and fix things, and also see that there's just so much happening in the world, so much magic that you just don't see. And so much of that story is about just family and divorce and queer sexual awakening and all this other stuff. And what it really was in the first place, it was actually a TV pilot that I had filmed a couple years beforehand that just didn't work. And it was one of those things where I took all my characters and I made them, because in the TV pilot they're 20, 30 somethings or whatever, and I actually got to pitch it to a bunch of people, but it never really got bought out, obviously, because I'm here still, and no Netflix deal for me yet.
Give it time.
Right. But just taking that idea and then just taking all my characters and making them all middle schoolers really told me that I needed to go back in my own time and really unpack a lot of the things that I went through in middle school, good and bad, and to really kind of bring that forth as far as who I am as an artist. And so much of that story is about just believing in something. And it's also about things like intersectionality and all that other stuff that I think is important to me. So there's that. And I think when I first was writing it, I was going to pursue the traditional publishing route, but I just decided that I didn't want to sell my art to anybody else. And I just feel like I had the entrepreneurial spirit to just publish it independently, and here we are now. And I'm working on my second book now, Project Anju, which is like a sci-fi light piece about this girl who has her voice stolen by this virus, and she has to go into the internet to go get it back. And that's what I'm working on now. Hopefully I can put that out soon, sometime next year maybe. But yeah, that's me as a novelist, because I've always wanted to write books. I still have a little novella series that I wrote back when I was 11 or 12 years old, and I reread it recently, and I was like, wow, these are some really profound things that I'm talking about as an 11-year-old. Maybe I should try to write a book someday. And then,
little 11-year-old dropping knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Come over here, young boy.
It sounds a lot like my grandma.
What you know about this?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing too. Just you'll be surprised what comes out from you when you're really taking the time to write out so many words.
Do you think it's harder for you to believe that you're in these positions because there's a force in the world telling you that you're not supposed to be there?
Yes, I feel like that is very much what my narrative is as a person. I think belonging has been something I've tried to seek out for so long, something that I've tried to cultivate on my own. I think that also lends to the whole reason why I'm an independent author. Because I think displacement is a huge problem as far as, when you are the quiet kid in class, when you are the nerd kid who would rather go home and play Super Nintendo all day instead of play outside,
Mm-hmm.
or just pretty much any of the things that kind of happen there. And when you grow up and as you get older and you start interacting with different people who just don't have the same upbringing as you, especially when I went to college. My first year I went to Hofstra in Long Island, and that school is white as hell. And what threw me off though was that not so much that, but the fact that that was the first time I realized that I grew up poor. And that threw me off because, I didn't understand what student loans were or how to get a loan in the first place. I'm 18. The most money I'd ever spent was like buying my first GameCube that summer before college. I had no idea what money meant. So when it comes to things like status and all that other stuff, it's so hard to unpack that because it's like, where do I fit in with these people? Do we have anything in common? And what about the things that we don't have in common make us somewhat compatible, or can we have conversations about it? What can we learn from it? And what I think is happening, even still today for me, is that I still don't feel like I have a place where I belong. And I think that that's okay, because not belonging is still a place to belong. Yeah. And I think there is a lot of good that can come from that, but it's harder because what ends up happening is that you have to do so much self-evaluation and become so much more self-aware than other people. And I think that kind of can give you an advantage when it comes to being able to adapt to other different groups and things like that. So I'm able to interact with people in ways that I think people who are more comfortable, who do feel like they belong somewhere, aren't able to. Yeah. And that's kind of the responsibility of a journalist, is to just be in a place where you aren't comfortable. So I feel like my displacement is actually a gift in a lot of ways. So yeah.
It's also tough because you feel like you said, you're working twice as hard, and it kind of goes back to the editing again. It's like you're working twice as hard to get your point across, which will ultimately be received in such simplicity. Yeah. Even though you did all this work, right. It's like the equivalent of being winded after you made your point, and everybody's like, "Oh, so you don't want to go?"
Right. Exactly.
And I'm done.
Right.
Yes. So is life. We've been, there has been this holding back for so long that even when we are right where we need to be, we feel like we're still playing catch up. Yeah. Yeah. And as we're talking now, we've just passed Juneteenth. Yeah. There's been many conversations about this, and I feel like at least once a month I have a conversation with somebody. You may have heard this before, where they say it's a black thing and you wouldn't understand. It's a black thing and you wouldn't understand. Right. There's no way for me to really explain this to you without being super winded and you missing the mark for the most part. Right. I just need to encompass it in that and just say, I don't know.
And that's why I'm a writer, because so much of that has to do with, hey, this is my identity. This is how I see the world. The best way for me to convey that is through sitting down for a couple years and putting something together in a book form, or, sitting down for a few days with an essay and really contemplating this one particular thing. Whereas I'm not able to take that thing, that point that I made in that essay, I can't boil that down into just 2 minutes of talking with someone. It has to be a big thing. Whenever people ask me deep questions about that, my initial response is, 1, are you sitting down?
Yes.
And 2, do you have a beer? Because this might be a while.
Do you have a minute? I mean, you asked me a loaded question.
Right. And then people say, Kyle, you're so quiet. And I'm like, well, because if I start talking, I'm never going to shut up.
Yes. And parents, if you were listening, that right there is something you have to pay attention to. Yeah. If you are around children who are quiet, they are waiting for their opportunity to spread their wings. There's so many kids out there who, for whatever reason, have been told to sit down and be quiet, or sit in the back, and they are just dying. They have so much to share with the world. And if we can acknowledge that, like a teacher who's hovering above a classroom should be able to acknowledge that in the room and help those kids.
Because I mean, think about how often you get punished for talking in school, or how few times there was an opportunity to really talk about you and your experiences, with whether it be with the other teachers or with the other students. I remember feeling like when I was younger, when I would come home from school, I felt like I had forgotten how to talk sometimes. Like, not even kidding, where it was just like I couldn't form words. I would forget how to even spell words sometimes because I wasn't exercising that part of my brain the whole day. I'd get up first thing in the morning and wouldn't be able to say anything till maybe I got home, and maybe if, my family was in a talkative mood or whatever, and I never really had the chance to just converse with people. I feel like I'm still learning how to do that. Yeah. And then also, not even just in a way that I've always felt like I'm a good listener and all that other stuff, but I think knowing how to answer questions from people, paying attention to my posture and how sometimes when people do ask me questions, I feel like my shoulders start to sink. I start to feel like I need to hide because they're asking me about me and I'm not prepared for that. I didn't rehearse that this morning. I'm not ready to talk about me today. Yeah. And then, when you have people in your life that are genuinely curious about who you are and who other people are, that's awesome. And I try to spend as much time with those people as possible because they do. Those conversations are always the best because there is that back and forth of just like, hey, what are you into? What are you thinking? What do you feel about this? Like, those aren't questions that you got asked as a kid very much.
They feed you. You feed each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh. I didn't expect us to get so deep in this conversation. I was like, I got all these bullet points, and I feel like we'll get there, but it's like, wait a minute. Okay. I knew that I was going to basically unlock doors with these conversations because, we all work together, but we work in different places where we come together, but we are in a profession where we kind of work alone. Yeah. Unless, like we'll talk about the podcasting, unless you have co-hosts where you work with them, most of this is kind of solitary. So you're just in your own head saying like, this is golden, but I don't know if anybody else is going to love it. Or this is basic, and I don't know if anybody else is going to resonate from it. But it's basic for you because you've already unpacked it. Right. And now it's sometimes the simplicity of what you deliver is so much more for the people receiving it than the more impactful things that you have to leave on the table. It is mind-blowing when you think about it.
How we're able to just operate without ever seeing each other.
Yes.
It's crazy how I've gotten to a point in my life where when I have a lot of friends that I've met through social media, and I'm at that point where that's normal for me now. Yeah. Whereas, 5-10 years ago, you're meeting someone that you met on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And there's even been times where I've been hanging out with friends, and there was one time specifically where it was a friend of mine and we had just came back from happy hour or whatever. We went back to our apartment, and some of her roommates' friends were there, but they had never met. Like, my friend and those other friends that were there had never met, but the one friend was like, hey, I know you. You're this photographer on Instagram, and I really love your photos. And, they had never met before. Yeah. And that person had already followed them and was already commenting, all this other stuff. They already had a relationship with each other, but had never met in person. And that is what's normal now. Yeah. And I think that's great because that's something I wish I had when I was little. I wish Twitch was a thing when I was a kid. Definitely. And for those who don't know, Twitch is a platform where people can stream and play video games and interact with people while they're playing and all that other stuff. And even there, I've met some really great people through there too that I'm really good friends with. The person who left the comment on my Facebook, I met her in person once, but we bonded over Twitch. Yeah. Even though we live in the same city together. So it's like, it's weird how the world works now.
Isn't it crazy we had to use technology to do what we were doing sort of manually before? It was like, it was somewhat before our time that people would gather at someone's house to listen to a new record.
Right.
We don't have listening parties.
Right. And that's something I wish I had more of, because I do have a record collection. I wish I could just, hey guys, come over and we'll drink champagne and listen
I got that new Il Duce hotness.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I definitely yearn for things like that, but I also do, yearn for the digital extension of that.
Yeah. So I think that's why we embrace social media so much. And it's like, where can you find me? Just type in my name. I'm everywhere.
Right. Like,
even that obscure platform, I got a presence over there.
Yeah, I'm on MySpace.
I'm not really using Vero or AO, but I got an account there. You can find me if you need to.
Which is also funny when people ask you that question, where can I find you? It's like, well, you could find me in South Philly on 3rd Street. Like, no, you can, but don't find me there. Find me online first.
Find me online. Yeah, definitely.
Don't catch me outside. Catch me online.
So that will move into more of my wheelhouse to talk about podcasting. So you have a podcast called Casual Misfits Radio.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about it and how it got started.
Casual Misfit Radio is a podcast about stories and the misfits who tell them. It's a podcast I started back in October, ahead of NaNoWriMo. I have a couple of co-hosts, Katie Antonson and Michelle Nugent. Katie is a friend of mine who I used to write with for Rock on Philly back in the day. Michelle is a writer friend of mine who I actually met through Facebook, but we went to some writer group meetings back in the day, a few years ago. But with the podcast itself, we talk about story, we talk about just different elements of story and thinking about how that applies to our personal lives. And sometimes I have guests over, but I'm trying to have that more often, just talking about whatever they're working on and things like that. And it's not just with writers, but it's also, I had one guest who is a voice actress. I've had someone on there who's a filmmaker, just various different mediums or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that podcast got started mainly for the reason that us three just were... didn't have enough interaction with writer friends in life, and I kind of pulled them together and we had some meetings and we said, hey, look, let's do this thing, let's just do it, because it was going to start off as sort of a YouTube channel, and then even before that, in its earlier things when I was just by myself, I was thinking of it being more of it's just something totally different, but when it kind of came together, it just felt really right. That we're just a few people who talk about what it's like to belong or not belong, and what our upbringings are, what our experiences are, and that's it in a nutshell.
Whenever because I have super nerdy avenues that I go down.
Right.
When I hear the Misfits, I think of Jem and the sort of villains of the animated series Jem, where the Misfits.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
And I always said somebody on both sides should take Jem and the Holograms and the Misfits and just recreate their entire catalog.
Right.
Just modernize it, rearrange it, and everything, because there was all this music that was just there to kind of move that story forward.
Yeah.
And it's forgotten for the most part. Nobody can really talk about any of the songs that were on.
I've totally forgot about
unless you're stumbling upon YouTube or something.
Right.
You have them.
I would watch those on Boomerang all the time when I was a kid.
I called it an OGT. It was my obviously gay trait, but I know that there are other people who are not gay who watch Jem as well. This podcast is not about Jem, but as you can see,
it can be.
The thing about tapping into your nerdy self is that you can unpack something,
right,
and get real deep in it. Maybe somebody's listening going, oh my God, it's a conversation about Jem's giving me a life right now.
Hey, and that's on them. And that's how I feel about, that's my thing with Sailor Moon. Right?
Yeah?
And I remember the first time.
I've got quite a few friends who are big Sailor Moon
Right,
fans.
and I'm a huge Sailor Moon fan. And I remember the first day I watched it. It was a Tuesday, and it was on UPN before it was even called UPN. I was 8 years old. I'm at my grandmom's house for the summer, and I watched it. It was the first episode with Sailor Mercury in it. And I was like, man, this show is so corny. Why am I watching this whole thing? And then Wednesday came. I was like, I'm going to tune in. And then it's like, I'm recording every episode on VHS tapes. And I have been obsessed ever since.
Yeah.
And it's funny how things like that sneak up on you because you don't realize that. I wonder if that response initially was defensive in such a way that, hey, look, this is speaking to you, but it's different from what you're normally used to. And that was the first time I'd ever seen any sort of Japanese anime. So it's like, I didn't recognize it.
Or what society has claimed that you're even allowed to process.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Sailor Moon isn't for you.
Right.
It's for little girls. We're trying to get them to buy toys and stuff.
Like, you should be watching Dragon Ball Z. I'm like, well, why can't I watch both?
Yeah, it's like, there are people of all sorts behind the scenes bringing this story to life.
Exactly.
So this is why it resonates with me. It's like I never understand. Like, we're starting to really dig deep now to kind of understand why we're being drawn to such things. But we just had all of these. It's like there was this fear. If people become themselves, it'll be like, we won't be able to control them. See, this is what happens. So we gotta force everybody into boxes so that we can control them.
Yep.
And now we have agency and we have our own minds. We've always had them. It's just like unlocking a door. You mean I was holding this key this whole time?
Exactly.
It was right here on the ring.
And that's why belonging is overrated.
Yes.
Because belonging means that you fit in a box a lot of times. Maybe not all the time, but a lot of times that's what it implies, or that's what's actually happening, and you don't realize it's happening. Because when you're outside of that, when you are not in a place that you're used to, you got to start thinking about you, and that scares a lot of people. It scares me.
So you mentioned GameCube, and I feel like when I went to the fruit themed tech company I worked for, there was a GameCube in every break room. And there was only one game that was played. Which was
Smash Brothers, I guess? Okay.
There it is. One of us. It's so funny that system had so many other games that could have succeeded and probably did, but it's like, no, you only have a GameCube because you have Smash Brothers that you play.
Which sucked because I was just talking about this yesterday where I was like, I need to go buy another GameCube because I don't have my original one anymore. And for some odd reason, I sold it. But my Smash Brothers, I ended up buying 3 copies of it because I kept losing Melee. And thank goodness for digital games because I lose everything.
Isn't Smash Brothers on the Switch now?
Yes, it is, and I just hit 100 hours worth of playing yesterday.
Oh my god! I'm one of my best friends is I would consider him a hardcore gamer, but he ends up buying games that don't get open right away.
Right.
It's like we jump on the pre-order bandwagon, but it's not like we're going to open it right now and just live our lives. And at the time, we weren't, the software wasn't too tied to social media, so you could blast to the world that you got it today. Right. You're just like, I can't wait to have this, and you're like, if you weren't going to play this for 2 months, you could have waited and got that discount after all open. But I need to have them, so I have several game systems. Too. I have a Switch. I have a PS4. I have a PS3. It's in a drawer.
Right on.
What else? And then just whatever. I only have a couple of sort of mobile games that I play just when I'm passing time or waiting for something to update. But I do have a ton of games that I had this mindset of I am enjoying this world that I'm in and I don't want it to end.
Right.
So I will play it slowly.
Yeah.
I'm slowly getting through Spider-Man. I'm slowly getting through Kingdom Hearts 3.
Oh boy.
I'm slowly getting through Breath of the Wild. And I don't know if I'm ever going to finish that.
You don't finish Breath of the Wild.
You don't, yes. And then they keep adding DLCs, so it's just...
And I think it's interesting because video games were my first love. I remember... when I was 6 or 7, coming down for Christmas morning and seeing, oh, look, we got a brand new TV. That's cool. I'm like, what's this big box? Oh, my God, it's a Super Nintendo. And then there were more boxes, and there was Zelda and Mario Kart and Mario World. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is the best Christmas ever. I don't know that I thanked Mom enough for that day.
Yeah.
But what that did for me, though, coming up, I don't know if anybody knows anything about The Legend of Zelda. It's really important to me because that game and those games gave me a sense of adventure, and they also helped me figure out how to problem solve. They also really helped my reading skills, my comprehension skills, because you do have to do a lot of reading and figuring things out in those games. And it's a whole new world that I think for me was so important, because I think that helped inform me as a writer and as a storyteller. And it also served as just a means for therapy for me. Whenever I'm having just these really difficult bouts with depression or anxiety, or even when I have panic attacks every once in a while, the only thing that calms me down is playing Zelda. And I think I'm glad that, there's more conversations about video games as a medium in general. But they are important to me, and that's the one thing that we can go down a rabbit hole and talk about for hours. Casual Mr. Radio originally was a video game podcast.
I'm already thinking now. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have to have several revisits where we just unpack games, because I was like, should I ask him about Pokemon Go right now or Wizards Unite that just came out?
Yeah, it's coming out tomorrow.
We could talk about this forever if we did, but we'll definitely have to return to conversations.
That'll be in the after hours version of the podcast.
Yes. Many doors being unlocked. Behind this door was another door. And guess what? I just pushed it right open. It was here.
Yep.
Yes. So when I do like to throw out sort of a fun kind of question, and I wanted to ask you if you could pinpoint a notable Philadelphia experience. Like something that really stands out in the time that you've been in Philadelphia, that if maybe you were talking to somebody who's not from Philly, you could talk about a moment that said, this is home for me.
Man, I feel like there's so many tiny moments in my experience with Philly that really make me love it. I really think back to... there was Made in America 2014 was kind of a big deal for me, because I covered it and I got to just meet all these people. I got to meet J. Cole. I got to meet Stevie Aoki. All these different people were just there. Pharrell was there. I was taking photos with on like by the stage and with them, and Lady Gaga and not Lady Gaga, Grimes. All these people, and it was just amazing. And I remember on the last show day that we were there, it was me and my friend Katie, who's on my podcast. We were there, and it was like raining. It was just pouring down rain, and everybody was kind of dispersed. But then everybody came back together, and they kept on the stage. And like that to me was like, hey, look, we're Philly, and we're gonna not care about there being weather or thunder or lightning or whatever. Like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna have this great party, and it was just pouring down rain, and everybody was just having a great time. And I remember that night so fondly, because that made me feel like this was home for me. And in 2014, I had moved, and I just came back, and that reminded me of like just the spirit of Philadelphia, that like nothing can get us down.
Yeah.
And I think that was, and it wasn't necessarily specifically Philly. I mean, it's Made in America, so it happened in Philly.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like had that not happened, I might not have moved back permanently to Philly. Just little things like that. Just those single nights that happen, and you realize that Philly is such a beautiful city, when 10, 20, 30 years ago, this was a town that didn't have an identity, or just had a lot of things wrong with it and things like that. Yeah. And how it is turning around, and it's definitely not without its problems now, but I mean, it's like, well, yeah. And
what have you done lately?
Right, exactly. And that's kind of the thing where I feel like me not being so big into history, I wasn't, I still haven't been to the Liberty Bell. I haven't seen the Liberty Bell, and I don't eat cheesesteaks. Whatever, and I think that kind of makes me turn my nose up when people say, oh, I'm coming to Philly, where's the best cheesesteak? I'm like, well, honestly, don't go to Pat's and Gino's, go to the food carts that are on Market Street or whatever, where you just kind of can get those like $4, and it's going to be the best cheesesteak you ever had.
Fighting words right here.
Hey, I'm ready for a fight.
We'll have to have a conversation just about, give me 5 cheesesteak places, and then we'll talk about them.
Right. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of finding the little secrets in Philly, and the hidden gems that makes this city so special.
Yeah. My fan mail will come addressed
right.
to Philadelphia.
Right. It took me 28 years to fall in love with the city.
Yeah.
I've always felt like I've had a
responsibility. But you were born and raised here.
Yeah.
So I was in the Delaware Valley,
Right.
like South Jersey. So it was like, you're either going to Philly or Atlantic City.
Right.
And as we see, how wonderful Atlantic City is right now. Sorry if you're listening in Atlantic City.
We love you.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah. The beach is all right. Sort of.
Is it though?
Not really.
No. We're not going to speak on that. I have many thoughts. But
yes.
Anyway.
Yes, we do. Your role as associate editor here at Broad Street Review. What is your contribution to BSR, and what do you hope to contribute to BSR in the future?
I think I want to do a good job of making sure every voice is heard. Mm-hmm. I think looking at anyone who may be Black and brown, or anyone who's in the LGBTQ community, whatever the crossovers may be therein, so much of that isn't represented well, I think, in other publications, at least in general, or at least when I was coming up, it wasn't. And so much of that has to do with the fact, for me, it's been restrictive because my way of thinking about my identity is that I'm a vicarious person who learns from other people so much, and there are different perspectives. And if I'm only covering pretty much what everybody else is covering, the same kinds of people that are or the same kinds of shows or art or whatever experiences, I feel like I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
And it's really important to me that I just try to elevate everyone, because it goes back to the whole belonging thing. If people are going to be doing their own thing, if they're taking all these different samples from all these different experiences and making it their own, that means we're going to see a huge amount of displacement as we sort of continue to grow within just this world where everything is so different. We have so much access to different ways of experiencing and exploring things, like just whether, we don't sit down at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night anymore to watch TV together all over the country. Yeah. Which means that we're experiencing things at different times, at different places, or we may not be watching that TV show. We may be watching this thing. We may be going to this theater to go see that show instead. A lot of people are going to find themselves in a place where they saw something, or they read something, and they did something that they don't get to share with everyone, that there's no community behind it. And I think by uplifting all those voices, everyone's voices, as much as possible, as much as my bandwidth can handle, bringing that to light so that way people feel like, okay, I'm not the only one. And while I may not belong to a full-blown community, at least I have at least one other person who's representing what it is that I believe in.
Yeah. Good comment. Any summer plans?
Summer plans, actually quite a bit. I need to finish my book. That is priority. I've been working with a wonderful writing coach over the past few months. She's really helped in my writing. But it is time to really sit down and write this book finally, because I've been working on it for about 4 years now. That's priority. I'm going to Austin next month. I don't know why, because it's over 100 degrees in Austin. But I got some friends there that I really
hang out with the bats under the bridge.
Yeah, basically. Why not? And then looking to travel to Columbus, Ohio this summer, because my partner's family lives there. But Sugar Ray is going to be performing, and I can't wait for that.
Oh my God.
And then we're going to go to Seattle after that. And yeah, I'm trying to travel once a month, because what I'm learning is that that's helping me unplug a lot, even if it's just like 2-3 days. Because I do so much in like a huge concentrated amount of time, and I feel like if I don't turn off, I'm going to burn out. Yeah. So I'm trying to tell myself, just travel once a month, a couple days. Not no 2-3 week vacation. I don't need that. That's too much. I get homesick. I miss Philly too much.
No, extended weekends.
Yeah.
Be nice.
And, since I do work from a laptop, I could just bring my work with me and,
Oh my God, I figured out how to work everything from tablet. I am unstoppable now.
It's great, right?
I will stop carrying this recorder soon, because I'm pretty confident with the sound quality of the memos.
Yep.
after I get through the editing process, I'm going to be unstoppable soon.
Yeah.
So how do we keep in touch with Kyle? How do you contribute your voice weekly, and how do we find you on the social channels?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kyle Literally. I've been kind of in a little bit of a hiatus there because I'm still trying to figure out what my social media platform would look like. Again, being more me, it's kind of a big thing. So there's that. You can also find my podcast, Casual Misfit Radio. We debut a new episode every other Tuesday, which is also on hiatus. We'll be back in July. But that's on all the platforms. It's on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud as well. You can also catch my writing and my blog and all that other stuff at kylevhiller.com. And I think that's about it.
Your piece on BSR.
Yeah, of course, naturally.
What's new? What's next? Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. Well, Kyle, it was a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you.
Thank you.
We've been to several sort of meetups where everyone is kind of engaging, but we haven't really had a chance to unpack.
Unlock those doors.
Yes, unlock those doors. And now that there are so many doors open, I got to come back and revisit those rooms with you.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Thank you so much for coming to chat with me today. It was truly a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thank you.
Right.
Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going. head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Contribute to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at Broad Street Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.